March 20th, first day of spring here in Midwest. We're up out here on the bean field doing an audit. I want to show you around. These beans have been devastated. There's still some beans down here. They've been knocked down, and these beans produced, what did it produce? 1, 2, 3. 3 beans still left in those pods. So there was plenty of food. But the deer and the elements have basically ravaged this. And this is what you wanted. There's still crop here if they had to forage into a longer winter. All animals would benefit from this. And you want to make sure when you plant a food plot, if you're going to bring them into a food source, make sure you got enough food source to sustain them throughout the winter months. Now let's pan around here. As you can see, this bean field has been completely flattened. It's just, and that's what you want. There's still some standing here with beans on, but for most part, they've been eaten. The black locust pods have been foraged on. There's still a few on the ground, but you had a tremendous amount of grazing pressure of all kinds of wildlife, from the turkey, the squirrels, the rabbit, the coon. Everything up here would come out here and eat off these fields. And you still had some left over. And like I said, I do not plant food plots for the sole purpose of killing anything, and I'll show you the proof of that later. And as you walk through here, you can be observant, and you can tell there's not been a lot of deer activity up here, because they're in that transition time right now. They're switching over to green, and we'll get down to where I think they're switched over to. So it's really important to have a diversified land management, not just solely one source of food, because that will run its course, and then the deer will no longer have any protein to seek or any nutrients to seek. So you got to be diversified, and you got to be willing to give back monetarily to make it happen right. As you can see, the corn was devastated. We didn't have that much corn this year. We're going to probably put this whole field in corn in 2016. Just wandering down through here. And what I'm wandering over here for, you remember that Osage orange tree with all the hedge apples on it? It was just loaded last year. Well, we're going to go up underneath it here, because I've told you once, and I've told you twice, and I've told you 3 times now how attractive those hedge apples are. And you can see for yourself firsthand, there's not a hedge apple left under that tree. They've been totally consumed. And I noticed the squirrels come out and do a lot of foraging on those also. So it's not only deer that attracts. But like I said, that's what my whole plan is. It's not a one-dimension, one-mentality, a thrill kill site. It's giving back and having a diversified wildlife on your property, not just one species. What we're standing here in is what's left over of the pure attraction. And you remember on January 10th how lush and green this still was? We still had deer foraging on it through up to the last day of the archery season. And this is what's left of that. It's been completely cropped off. There's still some turnips there that they didn't get, but it really got hammered. And basically this was hammered by the white-tailed deer. So I'll pan around here and show you the results. Yeah, this was completely, it was still really green on January 10th, as you've seen, January 9th. It was still lush green and still had a lot of tractability to it. Now the deer, as you notice, the tracks on the trail are completely gone. It has no use for any wildlife. You can see the old deer poop. That's months old. So the sign, they have left this type of a food source. But you can see the browsing pressure and the tons and tons that they did eat off of here. Now this would have been solely for deer. But like I said, my main purpose is to attract various kinds of wildlife, not just specifically the white-tailed deer. And keep in mind that the deer that are on this field can be 3/4 of a mile away. So you better be man enough and woman enough to understand that when you start planting food plots, that someone else can probably benefit from your labor. But that's all right, because that's your mindset going into this. You're not doing this for your own self, you're doing it for Mother Nature and the wildlife. So if somebody else harvests the deer that you helped along through nutrition and with your effort and of tilling the ground and buying the seed, so it be. That's what you should be. That should be a happy moment for you, not a sarcasm moment that somebody shot my deer. Just keep in mind, like I've said before, you don't own the deer. None of you own the deer. If you're hunting free roaming deer, they're the public's deer, not yours. You can tell by these trails that the deer population right now on this property are nil to none. With this soft mud, if there'd have been the numbers of deer that travel here, this would have been tracked up like a cow path, and it's not. And that's seasonal, so that's the way it goes. We're going back to another annual plot that was planted in, I believe, tall tine tubers and wintergreens. Yep, we're on the wintergreens right now, and you can see one time when I was measuring that, this stuff was boot top high, 18, 20 inches tall. And after the season, it's been greened down. My boot, it's not even as tall as my boot. And that's what you want to see. All these food plots have been consumed by various types of animals. And that means you're doing something right. If you came out here and you still had a surplus of forage, it might mean you don't have the deer to support that acreage. Or if they get ate off too fast, then you might have to make them bigger. And the spring is the time of the year to find that out. And this is the first day of spring. But you can see the grazing pressure that's been on this field. And it's been pretty tremendous. And that's what you want. And by doing that, you've got the nutrition from the soil through the roots up through the forage into the animal without mineral supplements and all that other garbage that's on the market today to grow the monster buck. And I will talk about that a little later today, of the monster buck and the monster mentality, where we're going to go with that. This is what you eat, is what you are. And this is how I want my land to be managed. Right here, the food source, a browse. Soft wood being browsed on, nipped off by deer. South-facing slope, another food source in the winter. Mock scrape we made back in October. I had a subscriber ask me why I put those on there with the leaves. Well, that pin oak still had its leaves, and the reason I put that on there is to give the scent something to cling to if you dump urine on it or whatever. And there they are, they're still on there. First day of spring and March 20th, and you see how that scrape was used. So that was the reason to put those pin oak on there. They stayed on there throughout all that wind and all winter. They were still on there. Now as we get down here to our clover field, which is a perennial, you're starting to see a whole lot more activity on these trails. Because when we were up on the annuals, these trails here are heavily laden with fresh track. That's telling you what the deer prefer to be eating here in the spring. And clover is their #1 draw. So let's go up here on the clover field. Well, here we are on a big clover field. Now keep in mind, we planted this basically in the fall of 2011, but really got it going in 2012. So this would be the 4th spring on this plot, and it's still producing good clover. That's the nice thing about a perennial, but it takes a lot of maintenance. You got to be willing to spray, and you've got to keep fertilizing. And a lot of people say you don't need to fertilize clover, blah blah blah. I've heard it all. Yes, you do. You need to side dress it with potassium and phosphorus to keep the roots being strong. Clover is a legume. It fixes nitrogen into the soil, but it still can be side dressed with a little phosphorus and potassium just to make the roots a little bit stronger. So, and like I said, this is what I prefer. This is organic. My deer that come on my property, or the state's deer that come on my property, are not being doped in any shape or form. They're being induced to some high protein, nutrient grown food from the soil. Okay, here's that food plot that we did last April 1st. We planted it, we tilled the ground about this time last year. You can see the results of it. And it seems to me more and more as I watch some of these channels that they emphasize cutting corners. And they label it a poor man's this and a poor man's that. Well, I don't believe there's no poor man in America, especially if you're a hunter, because you probably got a $1,200 gun, a $1,000 bow, drive a $50,000 pickup. So I think your effort, you might want to do minimal amount of effort in your food plot planting. So don't expect results like this if you take that avenue, because it's not going to happen. Proper tillage, proper soil testing, proper fertilizer, and timing will get this result. And here's what you're looking at a year later. And you were right along with me. And I didn't take any shortcuts. And I'll tell you what, I probably don't have as much money as some of you. I just put my priorities higher. And that's what I suggest that you do. And like I said, I didn't grow these food plots to kill anything with. I just grew them to grow something and enhance the overall wildlife. Now I'm going to take you up top and show you some of the deer that I've harvested without food plots, long before food plots were popular, and long before dumping minerals on the ground was popular. Because some of you beginning hunters are getting really confused with these celebrities that you're watching, trying to promote this and promote that. You don't even know which direction to go. The best direction to go is settle down, get your bow, your gun, or whatever, and go to the field and slow down and accept that you're being challenged. And if you're blessed by killing an animal, that's fine. But if not, you still got the opportunity to go hunting. But let's get out of this competition with one another of who can kill the biggest monster buck. And we're going to talk about that up top. So let's go up there. Well, now you've seen the conditions of the food plot and your effort from last year. You know how to set your program up. And keep in mind, as I've said more than once, I do not intentionally plant food plots to kill anything. And in the background, you're going to see the proof of that. These deer all in the background were shot in previous years, far before food plot hunting. They were all taken by fair chase, by long hours, and most of them were shot under 15 yards. There's 2 deer in there that were shot at 30. The rest of them were shot between 5 and 15 yards. That's the sport of archery, getting close. Not how far you feel that you have the expertise to lob an arrow from one side of a food plot to the other, hoping for the best of luck. And I know there's people out there today advocating a long shot. If you want that, get out of archery, go back to rifle hunting, and pursue it that route. But in archery, it's getting close to the animal is what it's all about. And I've had people set some of my stands in the past and said, oh, your stand's too close. No, you're just not a good enough hunter. You don't know when to draw. You don't know when to time your shot. That's what the problem is. You set too far away. I can miss them at 5 yards. I don't need missing them at 35 yards. Anyhow, enough rambling about that. But what I wanted to get across is all these animals are in this Pope and Young book except for 2. And the 2 that aren't in the Pope and Young book would probably be 2 that most of you people would shoot. And the reason they didn't make Pope and Young is because they were really extreme, different type animal in their own right with their rack formation. That's what made them a trophy in my eye. And I'm going to show you. This particular buck is a rarity. It has 39 inches of mass. It has no conformity to it whatsoever. It has a 24-inch main beam on this side. It's a freak of nature. It wouldn't make Pope and Young, but I guarantee you Art Young and Saxton Pope both would have launched arrows at it. This particular buck has a 12-inch, a non-typical point. It's like a third main beam. 20 inches inside spread. You're never ever going to see a deer like that very often in the woods. That's what makes those a trophy. This particular buck right here is a typical 12-pointer. It was shot at 12 yards. There again, you didn't need to be long range shooting. Archery is not long range. 173 inches. This particular buck right here was shot at 5 yards. How this buck came to its demise is I scouted and I read the sign correctly, and I shot this deer at 2:30 in the afternoon. Probably when some of you people are looking at your Facebook and your when to go to the field type technology. Go to the field every minute you can go there and sit as long as you can. That's when you're going to kill the deer. It's not a scientific experiment as so many people out in this so-called archery world are trying to prostitute these animals out. And these animals, in some of your eyes, probably are inferior. But that's your opinion. But what I'm trying to get is each and every one of these animals has credibility. And except for two are registered in this Pope and Young 2015 record book. As I went through the Deer Classic 2 weeks ago, I noticed something abnormal. The non-typical deers, there was 4 of them over 200 inches. That's amazing. In a mere 10 years, that's changed 10 times in the record book. Now the top deer would be approximately, what do we got here? 233 inches, and now it's clear up to 64 and 6/8. Out of 10 of those deer, 9 of them were shot in the 2000s. And what I contribute that to is the mineral supplements that people are putting in the woods. And if we continue to go down that path, ladies and gentlemen, in my opinion, we're going to have to throw this record book out. Because the first deer that was entered in Pope and Young from the state of Iowa was 205 5/8, and that was clear back in 1994, when there wasn't supplemental feeding of minerals. Now, if you live in a part of the country where your soil is thinner, I can understand the supplemental minerals to try to bring them on. But you could also bring them on by letting them walk too. You're not going to shoot a high-scoring deer at 2.5 years old. It's going to have to be at least 5.5. So minerals help in those areas. But in Iowa, minerals are not needed. Period. Like it, delete me, do whatever you want. I'm going to make that real clear. These deer were all grown long before minerals and long before food plots, because our soil here in Iowa is rich enough to sustain that kind of deer. Now, as I said, the non-typical category has really changed. But if you go back in the record book, in 1962, the state record 197 and 6/8 by Laurie Gould is still the state record. And I don't know how many typicals have been shot since then, but there's a tremendous amount. Grow food plots, yeah, I'm an advocate of that wholeheartedly. And I enjoy doing that. I enjoy tilling the dirt, getting my hands dirty, watching things grow, seeing the variety of wildlife that food plots bring throughout the entire season. Dumping something on the ground, in my opinion, is a waste of time and altering Mother Nature. Now, we're the same society. If the Lance Armstrongs, the Alec Rodriguez, the Mark McGuires, if they take male enhancement hormone drugs to keep their performance up, we shun them like the plague. Because, well, that's unfair. They're doing something illegal. They're taking a dope to make themselves stronger or continue to stay on the game, on the cutting edge. Well, what are we doing as hunters? By going out and dumping minerals out to enhance the deer growth, and then running to the Facebook and put our face all over it. But look at what we shot. Hell, there's one guy out there now that shot a big deer, and he was bitching because it was only 13 inches wide on the inside spread, and he was touting, if it had been 20, it would have been the biggest deer ever. Hell, it was on steroids anyway. So, watch what you do with your minerals. Like I say, you're going to do what you're going to do. I'm just voicing my opinion on my channel. Now, I don't get paid for this. I'm just trying to bring it to you young people's attention that all these deer in the background, and I'm not bragging about them in any shape or form, they were all shot by hard hunting, by bow and arrows, at close range. So as you go forward with your food plots, don't get too carried away and think you're growing a monster. Because I'm going to show you something here in a little bit. I'm going to show you a monster. And you can do that right in your own home. So, without any further to do about food plots, and like I say, my food plots are planted solely for the entire ecosystem. For every creature that lives out here to feast off of. Not just these. Because I have harvested these deer without the aid of food plots or any supplemental feeding. Let's move over, and I want to show you what this new generation of people think they want to grow. All right, for you people that are into monsters, as I've seen the signs all over the Deer Classic, grow monster bucks on your property. Here you go, here's the results of monsters. You want to grow monsters, you can go down in your basement and create them yourself. You don't have to be screwing around with Mother Nature. And like I said, if an athlete took male enhancement hormones or steroids, you ban him 7 days to hell. Out of here. You're cheating. Well, what are we doing as hunters when we dope a deer and because we want to grow monsters? In my lifetime, when they talked 200, they talked 200 pounds of venison. They didn't talk 200 inches. People throw 200 inches around today like it's a given thing. Well, here you go. Here's a friggin' monster for you. It looks like he OD'd on his monster drink. So, I'm just trying to make a point. Let nature take its course. You don't need to be trying to create something, as the signs say, monster bucks. Monsters, the only monsters I've ever seen was Frankenstein and the Mummy. There you go. That's what you want to see in your woods? That's your future? Have at it. But when's it going to end? When's big enough going to be big enough? Do you got any clue on that? I haven't seen anything mankind haven't screwed up yet when they intervened with it. But yet, for some reason, people think that they're going to grow monsters on their property. Good luck. By the way, seems like there's a big movement in society today. They don't want people to alter their food. Well, friends, it don't get no more organic than Mother Nature's own animals growing off what she gave them to feed off of. But yet people still want to enhance them with some kind of dope-a-deer. These are organic, homegrown deer. You are what you eat. If you plant it, they will eat it and get that same mineral out of the ground. Just give them time. It's not drive-through deer hunting.